Coming in at number 10, we have the intelligent zombie Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy's greatest power is his resilience to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by Batman, he needs to figure out a whole new clever plan to find a way to properly defeat him. Coming in at number 9, we've got to go with CLAYFACE. When you're facing off against the world's greatest detective, being able to disguise yourself as anyone seems like a pretty useful skill to have. This alone would make CLAYFACE a difficult foe for Batman to overcome, but combine that with the huge amounts of physical strength that CLAYFACE possesses when he changes into his more monstrous Hulk-like form, and you have a rare mix of stealth and strength that keeps Bruce Wayne on his toes. This ability to manipulate others through careful mimicry allows CLAYFACE to be far more intelligent than he appears. And while his skill as an actor comes across as funny in depictions such as the Harley Quinn TV show, it can be quite deadly under more serious circumstances. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with the bladed assassin, Deathstroke. While in recent years, Slade Wilson has become more well-known for tormenting the Teen Titans, Deathstroke has also had many run-ins with the Justice League and the Dark Knight himself. With his brain operating at 9 times the efficiency of a normal human brain, Deathstroke is exactly the type of opponent that pushes Batman to his physical limits, with a complete mastery of every weapon he has at his disposal. Combine that with his Icon suit, which has been shown to even be able to withstand a punch from metahumans such as Superman, and this is a foe that Batman is always just barely able to outwit and defeat. Coming in at number 7, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only a few issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power throughout Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and the fact that he's consistently been able to figure out Batman's biggest secret in multiple different universes means that Hugo Strange just might be one of Bruce Wayne's biggest threats. Coming in at number 6, we have Bane, the villain who broke the bat. A brilliant tactical warrior who was raised from childhood inside an island prison, Bane's most notable act was when he systematically eliminated Batman's support system and eventually faced and bested him in single combat, shattering Bruce Wayne's spine over his knee. This victory over the Dark Knight was only temporary, but has still given Bane an intimidating reputation that he more than lives up to, going on to become a supervillain crime boss and proving that Bane isn't just about pure physical strength, but that he's also a ruthless and brutal strategist as well, even willing to kill Alfred Pennyworth just to emotionally shatter Damian Wayne. It just goes to show that you should never ever underestimate Bane. Coming in at number 5, we have Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. The owner of the Iceberg Lounge, perhaps the most famous criminal hangout in all of Gotham City, the Penguin might look similar to his namesake, but is far more deadly in reality. While an impressive crime lord even without any superhuman enhancements, the Penguin is made extra deadly by the special umbrella he carries, which is always stuffed to the brim with different lethal gadgets to help him fight against Batman or any other supervillain that seems interested in starting a turf war. This unpredictability and Oswald's sanity not quite being all there make the Penguin an incredibly difficult opponent to read, hiding the fact that this crime lord is far more dangerous than he initially appears. Coming in at number 4, we've got the reality warping Batmite. A troublesome imp from the same 5th dimension as the Superman villain Mr. Mxyzptlk, the Batmite is honestly more of a nuisance than a flat-out supervillain, often appearing just to try and challenge Batman or to see more of his heroic acts. Sending Batmite back to his own dimension is usually a tall order given his complete reality warping powers, but luckily the world's greatest detective is usually smart enough to outwit Batmite and send him packing to where he truly belongs. However, 5th dimensional beings have nearly limitless power within our regular 3-dimensional universe, meaning that Batmite should probably have a close eye kept on him in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have Arthur Brown, aka the Clue Master. Not to be confused with the similarly themed Riddler, the Clue Master is a former game show host who wound up turning to crime in order to pay the bills. The father of Batman ally Spoiler, the Clue Master for a time seemed to embrace the role of being a second-rate supervillain, before it was eventually revealed that his status as a Riddler ripoff was actually intentional, and that organizing Batman's more underrated foes was his master plan all along to avoid detection. It's not often that a villain is able to temporarily outwit the Caped Crusader, and Clue Master shows just how powerful the right man with a plan can become. Coming in at number 2, we've got Poison Ivy. Born under the name of Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy has always been dead set on protecting the green plant life of the planet Earth, and especially values it over human life. While well known for being able to control plants and utilizing poisonous kisses as a weapon, Ivy's powers may be beyond what she usually shows off. In a particularly noteworthy storyline, Poison Ivy was able to mind control essentially the entire human population of Earth through their consumption of fruits and vegetables. And while that's definitely some weird comic book logic as to how that would work, Batman was only barely able to defeat her by bringing her into contact with the one human being she cares about the most, Harley Quinn. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Batman Who Laughs. In a dark alternate world where the Joker realizes he's dying and begins a mass killing spree of everyone in Gotham, Batman is forced to finally kill his iconic foe. Unfortunately, at the moment of death, Bruce Wayne is infected with a special brand of Joker venom that completely flips his moral compass, but leaves intact all of his intelligence and tactical planning. All of the chaos of the Joker with the brains of Batman, this supervillain is Bruce Wayne's worst nightmare come to life, and was able to become so powerful over the course of his war against the multiverse that he was only able to be defeated by a literal God mode powered Wonder Woman.
In at 10, Rainbow Raider. The reason that all the good guys are good is because of their morals. Because they channel their anger into something positive. Because they can control themselves. But what happens when a hero with powers like Superman is filled with a red-hot rage? Well, we saw it in Injustice. But someone able to cause those emotions, that person being Rainbow Raider, makes them pretty damn powerful. Rainbow Raider's power is derived entirely from their special goggles, okay? Which allows him to project solid beams of rainbow-colored light that he can either use offensively or as a slide for travel, and he can also coat people in certain colors of light to induce emotions, like blue for sadness, red for anger. There's also the Rainbow Raiders, a team of super color-themed villains that also have powers based on the color of the rainbow. However, just the ability to induce emotion by covering someone in light is enough to make Roy G. Bigelow pretty damn powerful. If all my rage came out and I had super speed, damn, people would have to like hide in fear, but it wouldn't matter because I would find them. And at 9, Zoom. I included a CW character on this list specifically for the guy in my DMs who told me to stop doing it. The CW version of Zoom was not exactly what everyone was expecting, although you have to admit he is one of the best and scariest villains in the Arrowverse to date. The sheer demonic look he had, especially with the suit, shook even me. However, thanks to the Velocity 9 that he was taking, Hunter Zolomon was incredibly fast, the fastest we had ever seen at that point. So fast even that in order to fight him, Barry had to take speed out of the equation. And during the final fight, Barry had to create a time remnant because he wasn't wasn't fast enough to stop Zoom with only one of him. It only got worse after Zoom kidnapped Wally and Barry had to give Zoom his speed in order to get Wally back. This only made Zoom faster. It gets even worse when in the final fight the Time Wraiths come out of the Speed Force and take Zoom, which changes him into the Black Flash, and then he gets supercharged by the Speed Force to become the living embodiment of death for all speedsters. Plus, I mean, this guy was able to create breaches at will to bring hundreds of metahumans over to Earth 1. That's pretty damn impressive. And at 8, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, alias Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend. Cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs, Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof. The duo fell into the lab space below, with Allen landing amid the chemicals that gave, presumably, Earth 1 Barry his speed. Something in this incident, probably the chemicals, granted him his super speed, and he went on to become a super criminal alongside his girlfriend, who had also been given powers. While his girlfriend took on the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. The couple joined the crime syndicate at some point after this, and they ran through Central City, answering to no one, until one day the White House burned, around the time of Darkseid's incursion onto Earth Prime. The being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of supercriminals formed to find a way to safety. So yeah, it's basically just Barry Allen, but Earth 3. I say that's pretty overpowered. And at 7, Weather Wizard. Meteorological madman known as the Weather Wizard was a menace to both Barry Allen and Wally West's Flash, and one of the most overpowered supercriminals they've ever faced. First appearing in 1959's The Flash number 110, criminal Mark Martin armed himself with the Weather Wand, an advanced piece of technology which could control like atoms in the universe, some form of energy, okay? Martin took the wand from his deceased brother, a scientist who never intended it to leave his lab. With some modifications, it became a deadly weapon for the criminal, and at full power, the wand could summon lightning storms, rain clouds, or change the weather entirely. Whatever the weather was, Martin could use his mighty powers to rob banks and cause mass panic. A later reimagining of the Weather Wizard would see him instead granted the metahuman ability to control the elements without using the wand. And the Weather Wizard also appeared in the CW's Flash TV show as one of the many metahumans created by the particle accelerator explosion which gave Barry Allen his powers. However, on the show there are 2 versions, one of them appearing in the first episode which Joe West killed, and the second appearing in the 16th episode of that season, with the second one being the first's older brother, the Martin brothers, Clyde being the first one, and Mark being the second and the proper Weather Wizard. As Cisco said, he's been waiting to use that name since day 1. And at 6, Gorilla Grodd. Gorilla Grodd is a Flash rogue from Africa's Gorilla City. The original Grodd, which debuted in DC Comics in 1959, was a telepath who could control other animals and also had a form of mind control as well over humans. In the New 52, all inhabitants of Gorilla City had accelerated mental attributes due to the Speed Force, but Grodd was still the superior member of the species. On The Flash and the CW, Grodd was a very intelligent gorilla experimented on at Star Labs to try and create a super soldier for the US government. However, the torture and unethical treatment of the gorilla caused him to grow angry and evil, and he escaped seeking vengeance. Grodd had powerful mind control powers on top of superhuman strength and enhanced intellect, and at one point even combined with the Flash to be a psychopathic, telepathic gorilla with super speed. So I think it's safe to say that we should all be scared of Gorilla Grodd. Plus, his pop figure is pretty damn cool. Halfway through into number 5, Savitar. The fact that Barry Allen was able to just beat this whole Savitar thing from The Flash Season 3 will always escape me. I won't really ever understand how they actually ended up defeating a literal version of Barry from the future. Like, I get how they managed to do it, but it was still incredibly unrealistic, since technically Savitar would have known beforehand that the timeline was changing, since technically that should, in my brain, at least be how time travel works, but this ended up being how it works in the show, so that's fine, I guess. I don't see how it ever would have been possible to defeat a future version of the Flash without this though, but I know that he couldn't really die, since if he died, Savitar wouldn't be able to happen. A future version of the Flash is always going to be mega OP, okay? I said it. In at 4, Mirror Master. While Mirror Master never seemed like much more than a B-grade supervillain in Flash's Rogues Gallery, his power has made him so much more. Before he became a Flash version, the second Mirror Master, Evan McCulloch, was an assassin in Scotland and was already a formidable foe. However, once he got his mirror gun, he became insanely powerful. The mirror gun gives Mirror Master the ability to travel to an alternate dimension by entering and exiting any reflective surface. On top of being a significant pain in the Flash's side, Mirror Master has also fought Animal Man and was someone that gave him all he could handle. The CW used the Sam Scudder version, and he was only a minor villain, and then they kinda did Eva McCulloch for season 7, but honestly, Even Sam being able to travel through mirrors like that, trapping the Flash in the mirror dimension for a time, this guy is certainly underestimated. Although I hope that they find a way to explore maybe some of his abilities in later comics or even the show. I'd like to see that. Getting close to the end, in number 3, the Shade. This Golden Age Flash foe is one of the most powerful and most terrifying, but he isn't always on the side of evil, luckily. First appearing in Flash Comics number 33 from 1942, this immortal conduit for dark energy was a formidable enemy for Jay Garrick and often caused problems, the speedster, with his weaponized shadows. Kind of like my demons, causing me all kinds of problems as well. Initially depicted as a common criminal for the Flash to stop from robbing banks and menacing Keystone City in the 40s, the Shade was eventually reimagined as something much more sinister. Originally possessing a magic cane allowing him to control darkness, the revamped 90s Shade was given a real identity of Richard Swift and an endless supply of supernatural abilities. Returning to menace the hero Starman and eventually becoming his ally, the Shade used his powers of shadow manipulation, time travel, teleportation, and intangibility for both good and evil. The Shade also had his own dimension, the Shadowlands, where unwitting enemies would become trapped. And I think that having his own dimension earns him a spot in the top 3. Just saying. Penultimately, in at number 2, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear the story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but because, you know, of course, Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So, understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods. He started killing people, which honestly seems more realistic to me, aside from just like being done fighting crime totally, which can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers, understandably because again, this time Batman's a psycho. So, Batman, using the various rogues' weapons to fight Barry, knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill modified Batmobile, I don't know how the hell he did that, and then drives them both into the Speed Force. Again, I don't know how that happened or works logically, but okay. You do you, Bat Marty, we gotta get back to the future, your kids are in danger. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce, again, somehow ended up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing. And while Barry's mind was trapped inside Bruce's body, so he could just watch. He then gets a visit from the Batman Who Laughs, who was part of the Dark Knights and whose goal was conquering the multiverse, and since he was a version of Batman who was psycho, he was like, hey you, come here, come with me, we're the same kind of. And finally, in number 1, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Necron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Necron's purpose. Now they aren't really like fully resurrected, but that's kind of like the best analogy that we have. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, aura recognition, which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation, which lets them extract the hearts of individuals they've slain, and use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.01%, because you know that's a lot, it's worth it. And they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten, and then turn them into a Black Lantern upon death. Yeah, basically zombies with superpowers, so definitely not something to laugh at, especially when it's the man who killed Barry Allen's mother for the fun of it.
Number 10, J. Jonah Jameson. While JJ might not seem like the craziest supervillain out there, he has his moments, truly. Sure, he's just a guy who most of the time causes Spider-Man more grief in his civilian identity of Peter Parker as his loudmouthed, often angry, and demanding boss, but if he gets his hands on robots, whew, watch out. JJ isn't at the level of world domination underestimation, but for the most part, Spider-Man fans generally just think of JJ as a nuisance, a menace, if you will, to Peter's everyday life. However, JJ has not only threatened Peter's livelihood and Spider-Man's reputation, but has also even gone toe-to-toe with Spider-Man himself, and even at one point took on She-Hulk. Typically, he's at his most dangerous whenever he gets his hands on the Spider Slayer robots or armor, which he often uses to more directly hunt Spider-Man or other heroes down himself, using muscles, or robo muscles, I guess, as opposed to just the written word. And let's not forget that the written word and media itself are also way more powerful than we maybe give them credit for, both in the comics and in real life. Number 9. Sandman. The only thing that really holds Sandman back from being so deadly is his own disinterest in crime. In the end, Sandman often resents what he has become and even grows to resent being a criminal. There are even times in the comics when Sandman has tried to turn over a new leaf and go against his story as a villain, becoming reformed, preferring to stay neutral, lawful, and of course even at times teaming up and aiding heroes. This is really what holds him back though. That, and in some cases, the vacuum cleaner. Though really that shouldn't have been able to hold Sandman at all, considering that he can control the sand that makes him up, which means that yeah, he can just kinda like move out of the vacuum cleaner, right? As sand particles. Sand is a powerful substance. It can cut you, it can get inside a wound, it's minuscule, it can get through and into almost any room or location, as it can pass through the smallest nooks and crannies. Sandman is also virtually immortal and can create duplicates of himself, allowing him to access a giant form by balling up all of these duplicates together. Now imagine if he did something like this, but on the scale of all of the sand in the world. Let's not forget that scientists have estimated that there are more grains of sand on planet Earth than stars within our universe. I know stars are bigger than grains of sand, but still, there's a lot of sand on this planet, like a lot of sand. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about Spider-Man villains, let us know by clicking that like button. Number 8. Morbius. Another villain that is really only curbed, I think, because of his often more heroic nature and sense of humanity is Morbius. Okay, so Morbius might not be a global level threat like we were talking about in the intro, but he's definitely more powerful than you might think. A lot of people probably don't think about Morbius much at all, I imagine, but like the lizard, if he's completely feral and unreserved, he's pretty dangerous. Recently in the comics, we saw that Morbius is back to being a fearsome, uncontrolled, ruled by his hunger, pseudo-science vampire, when he comes up against Ben Reilly's Spider-Man during the Beyond Spider-Man event. Ben struggled to fight against Morbius, and if it wasn't for some help from Beyond, he may have even died as a result of their battle. In the end, it took the Daughters of the Dragon duo, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, together to take down Morbius, and even then, they may have only been able to do so because Morbius at that point was missing an arm. Dr. Michael Morbius can be quite strong when his power is completely unleashed, and there's nothing holding him back. Number 7. Flash Thompson. Flash Thompson isn't a villain anymore in the comics, but he did start out as one. And from his humble beginnings, you likely would not have imagined that he'd become so powerful as a character. Flash Thompson started out as Peter Parker's schoolyard bully. He didn't have any powers, he was just kind of a jerk. Over time though, Flash became less of an oaf and eventually even became a friend to Peter. He then goes on to serve in the military, becoming a decorated hero, and even becomes a superhero after he becomes Agent Venom, teaming up with the Venom symbiote, who also has a villainous origin story. Sure, Agent Anti-Venom, aka Flash Thompson, probably won't be the guy threatening the entire world, because, well, he's a hero, but he definitely now possesses enough power to instead be a hero who could potentially save the world. And considering that he was just your average run-of-the-mill high school bully, you probably wouldn't have expected him to come so far. Number 6. Sauron. I've always felt bad for Sauron. Like, this dude does not get enough love when it comes to our boosting of supervillains here on the channel. I know Sauron seems kinda silly on paper, but he's also pretty diabolical and deadly when he wants to be. And if the person writing the character also believes in his prowess. Sauron can temporarily absorb mutant powers, is super strong, and somehow has functional pterodactyl hands that he can use to pick up weapons and items. I don't even know how he does that. That's nuts to me. Sauron is also an energy vampire, which means his powers are literally deadly. He needs life force energy to live, and when he absorbs life force energy, it can actually result in the death of his victim. Honestly, I think if he just had the right team up, he could be pretty unstoppable. Maybe with X-Men Green he'll be able to do something crazy. I really want X-Men Green to be like a super villain team. Like kinda like Poison Ivy, like we're villains but we're like saving the planet. Number 5. Sin Eater. Sin Eater saw a massive power upgrade recently. Initially he was just a crazed man obsessed with absolving the sins of others through killing them. But But more recently, in Nick Spencer's run on Spider-Man in 2020, he became so much more than that. In issue number 46, we see Sin Eater with newfound powers to actually absorb and absolve the sin of villains, and with those sins, he would also gain their powers. This meant that the sky was almost the limit for just how powerful of a villain Sin Eater could become. However, after learning that he was being manipulated by Kindred and kinda used as a pawn, Sin Eater became distraught and ended up taking his own life. He would later be resurrected as a corpse, but we don't really know what happened to said corpse after he was brought back and the fight against Kindred sort of came to a close. He could still be out there somewhere though, and who knows, he could have some of his former hyped up powers. I doubt it, but even if he doesn't, he did have it at one point, so I think we should count it. It was pretty cool. Number 4, Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. I mean, look at what Mystique managed to do recently in X-Men's Inferno series, or look at what Chameleon might seemingly be up to currently in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as them, but he also is pretty good at just hatching plans as well. Number 3, Kingpin. When it comes to Kingpin, we usually think of him as a threat confined to New York City. In fact, some people don't even think of Kingpin at all when it comes to Spider-Man. Over the years, Kingpin has become more synonymous with the superhero Daredevil, even though Kingpin's first appearance was actually in a Spider-Man comic, making his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50 during the original 1963 series. Lately in the comics, Kingpin has been setting his sights on a much more grand prize than just causing grief for New York, its citizens, and its heroes. He is taking on all of the superheroes based in the US that oppose him as he aims to run for president, using Kilgrave, yes, the Purple Man's powers, to encourage everyone to vote for him. Or else. Superheroes who do not ally themselves with Kingpin in this endeavor will face his wrath during Marvel's Devil's Reign event. Number 2, Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors, and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be not so real of a threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world, or while even being defeated, he kind of still did that. His plan here was to convince everyone that he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, he actually still managed to kind of succeed. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating pretty much all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting Wolverine to kill the entire X-Men team and the school. Yikes. In other words, just because you think something isn't real doesn't mean that you shouldn't still fear it and that it can't still hurt you. A great illusion can be more powerful than actual action in some cases. Number 1, Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is a villain that might be well respected among Spider-Man fans, but on a greater scale, he's not likely someone you think of when you think of a global level supervillain threat. But while he might not share the status of comic book villains like Doctor Doom, it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to instill that level of fear among the superhero community. Dr. Octopus might seem a bit silly with his haircut and his mechanical arms and his sometimes snazzy white suit and sunglasses, but let's not forget that he's actually a diabolical super genius whose brilliance combined with the sheer strength of his claws makes him a dangerous person to cross. Some might say he's just superior.